Hey, we made it. It's Dr. Nina, and welcome to You, Your Body, and Your Health. The reason I said we made it is because we've been talking about macronutrients for the last 2 weeks, and we have made it to the last macronutrient. It's the last, but certainly not the least. We've made it to protein. Now, protein of the three, protein is definitely the one that's the least controversial. I think it's the most embraced, but believe it or not, depending on the kind of protein you're eating, it's also the most under eaten. And when I say that, I really mean it in a sense that there are different types of protein, and we got to make sure we have all of the proteins we need. So keep that in mind as we go through the show. But before we jump into this thing about protein, tell me where you're tuning in from as usual. Tell me, and do me a favor. Give me, I kind of like this last week. Tell me where you're tuning in from and give me your favorite protein source. And we will go ahead and move from there. I can tell you I'm tuning in from the Atlanta area, as I always do. And my ultimate favorite protein source. I mean, I could eat those bad boys every day. Shrimp. Oh gosh, I could eat them every day. I don't eat them every day, but I certainly could. So go ahead and do that for me. I'd like to see kind of like where everybody's eating styles are. Now, I'm going to jump into the topic because, like I said before, protein is definitely the least controversial, but there's a lot of confusion surrounding protein. And it's particularly related, again, to the types of protein and how much we actually need in our diet. Just like the other macronutrients we talked about, which were the carbohydrates and the fat, there are different types of protein. It's a broad category. All proteins are not the same. I want you to stay with me. All proteins are not the same. Again, it's the quality and the quantity of protein in our diets that's important. Now, I want to reiterate, as I do all the time, that this show is focused on improving health span within the lifespan. That is the number of years that you are healthy within your lifespan, however long or however short your lifespan may be. We want you to maximize it as much as you possibly can. Now, our bodies need a certain amount of protein for optimal functioning and overall good health throughout the lifespan, from the time we're born to the time we leave this earth. But I will say that it's especially important. Protein is very important as we age, and it happens to be a time where people tend to eat it a lot less. So that brings me to the aging successfully segment, which I'll have at the end, like I always do. And we're going to focus on protein and that underconsumption of protein as we get older. And we're going to discuss specific strategies for increasing protein intake in a healthy way in order to age successfully. So this is going to be a very good show. I also want to talk about something really quick because I noticed that in the last show, carbohydrates specifically, we get emotional, right? When we're talking about food. In the last show, I got pretty emotional talking about carbohydrates. I want to give you just a little bit about my brand, which is That Salad Lady. One of the reasons why I founded That Salad Lady is because I wanted to boost people's eating confidence. When I say boost eating confidence, what I mean is I want people to have a greater sense of control over the foods they eat. And it's the perfect marriage with this show, which is You, Your Body, and Your Health, because the way you eat, it's going to be what's best for you, your body, and your health. And I say that because I get a lot of comments in here that come in sometimes where people are saying, just do this and that's it, and do this and that's it. And to be honest, that's the stuff that works for that person, their body, and their health. What I do here on this show is give you specific strategies, facts and data, research based facts and data in a very simple way so that you can make the best choices possible for you, your body, and your health. Remember that, because although I said protein was not controversial, we are going to hit some controversial eating styles in this show. And if you know anything about the vegan versus the non-vegan diets, protein is always a big one that's coming up. So we are going to touch on that. But I want you to know when I talk about these things, we're solely talking about facts and data. And you take this information and you use it however you need to for you, your body, and your health. And be sure, as always, to ask questions. Go crazy with the questions. I will get those answers to you, even if not in this show, through at the end or after offline, you will get the answers to your questions. So let's go ahead and give a quick rundown. I love protein. I'm very biased and I love shrimp. And I see we got some people in the audience that love shrimp as well. So, like I said before, protein is one of the three vital macronutrients. I'm going to put another visual up here that you've seen in the last two shows as well. In this visual, I just want to bring some attention to protein. So again, we have protein being that macronutrient that yields 4 calories per gram. So you probably remember this from seeing the visual before. What I want to emphasize here is that protein itself is not meant to be an energy source. Now, listen to me when I say that, because it probably sounded a little bit confusing. It's not meant to be an energy source, but protein is meant to be more of a backup. So I'll give you an example. We know that carbohydrates are something that our body uses for energy. Fat can be broken down and used for energy. It can be converted to what's called glucose, which is a usable form of energy. Protein can do the same, but the body doesn't like doing it. Using protein for energy is a very inefficient process that the body only calls on in times of like famine, and that's like starvation. And if you're familiar with dieting, that's one of the times it happens. That is one of the times that it can definitely happen. So I want to make sure you understand that when you're doing these very extreme diets, especially diets where you're withholding food and withholding different calories, protein does not like to be used for energy. And if you start breaking down protein with those diets, your muscles will start to deteriorate. It's going to pull it from wherever it needs to pull it from. So I want you to get that part too as we go into the rest of the show. So I want to talk more about the different compositions of protein because, as I said before, they're not all created equal. So I want you to tell me again. I'm going to kind of give you a little poll out here. I asked you what your favorite proteins were, right? And I want to know, do you regularly experiment with with plant-based proteins? And if you do regularly experiment with plant-based proteins, I want you to give me one of those as well. I regularly experience with plant-based proteins, and I specifically experiment with ones that are complete proteins. And I'm going to talk about those now. So, as with dietary fats, proteins are not all created equal, as I said. But in this case, it's less about good and bad proteins and more about those complete and incomplete proteins. Now, I want to clarify this because I just asked you a question about complete versus incomplete proteins. And the deal is, a lot of times, and I'm sure you've seen it in articles, you've heard people talk about it, they'll just say things like, this is high in protein. But the fact of the matter is, something can be high in protein, but it would not be a complete protein depending on the food you're eating. I really want to emphasize that because proteins are made up of smaller units. I'm not going to get too scientific on you, but I need you to really hone in on this information. It's made of smaller units called amino acids. If you've ever worked out or eaten or drank protein shakes and that sort of thing, you've probably heard about those aminos. So I want you to understand that these amino acids they're like building blocks for protein. So a protein is comprised of a lot of different amino acids. And these amino acids and protein as a whole are important for every single function in your body. Every single function. And of course, we know that protein is important for preserving muscle health. Absolutely. That's a big one. And metabolism as well, because muscle health is tied into metabolism. But they're especially vital for bodily functions. And one notably is hormone secretion and action. So if you're not getting the right amino acids in your diet, your hormones can become imbalanced. So the body produces some of these amino acids, and we call these non-essential. They're non-essential because the body produces them. But there are other ones that must come from the diet, and we call these essential amino acids. Depending on your source, it's 8 or 9 of them. And I think as of now, I think it's all the way up to 10. But don't even worry about the different types of amino acids, because we can honestly do a whole show on those. Now, foods containing all the essential amino acids, these foods are called complete proteins. And the ones that don't contain them all, they may have some, but not all, these are termed incomplete. Now, I'm going to put another figure up there because that was a lot of complex stuff that I just said, right? But the key takeaway is if you have a well rounded diet, you will get the protein you need. But notice I said a well rounded diet. Complete protein sources, these are generally referred to as high quality carbs. These are, or excuse me, high quality proteins. These are an easy way to get your protein in your diet. And this is your meats, your poultry, your seafood, your eggs, your dairy foods, and even your whole soy foods. Eating these foods again will give you everything you need. So if you are regularly consuming animal-based foods, you're getting all your amino acids. There's no need to drink on shakes and all this extra stuff and do all these supplements, because if you're eating animal-based foods and high quality soy foods, you're getting, and I mean whole soy foods. This is your tofu, your tempeh, your soybeans like edamame. You're getting complete proteins. Now, if you notice, I have this little one in the middle. This is quinoa, and there's another one, amaranth. These are grains, but they're actually complete proteins. Most grains are not complete proteins, and we're going to talk about those now. Now, I don't want to say that these are not quality proteins because that sounds good or bad. They're just not complete. And these include pretty much all plant-based foods, again, except for the grains I've mentioned, but your cereals, your nuts, your seeds, your beans, your peas, a lot of your whole grain breads and that sort of thing. These are incomplete proteins. Now, although they're incomplete, you can strategically pair these foods to form complete proteins. For example, think of some of the food combinations that we kind of eat, but we don't even think about it, like rice and beans. That rice and beans alone, rice alone is not a complete protein. Beans alone, although beans have a lot of protein, it's not a complete protein. But when you put beans with rice, you have a complete protein. When you put peanut butter with jelly, not jelly. Woo, I'm thinking about food. When you put peanut butter or any nut butter, not just peanut butter, any nut butter with bread, you have a complete protein. When you do like hummus with a pita bread, you have a complete protein. Now, this is not something that I want you to kind of have to memorize. I'll say it again. As long as you're eating enough food, eating enough going in your body, you will get the amino acids you need, but you have to eat a lot. Now, I'm not saying that you have to eat all of them, because I just got a comment from Tamika saying it's hard for me because she has a sensitive stomach, right? Quinoa, although it's complete, it doesn't mean you have to eat it. Remember, I just gave you a big list. I don't want you to focus on those foods and say, I have to eat that food. I want you to focus on the variety that is available to you for anything you want to eat. That's the beautiful thing about diet and the beautiful thing about not shunning foods. If you don't like quinoa, eat something else. If you don't like beans, eat something else. Although, if you're following a plant-based diet, I gotta say, in my opinion, this beans is something you need to learn to love, because that's kind of your biggest friend when you're following a plant-based diet. And speaking of plant-based diets, that's one of the biggest problems with people who follow them. It's not the plant-based diet itself. It's that many people, vegans and vegetarians alike, they just don't eat enough variety. Look at me. I see a lot of people jump on the vegan and vegetarian bandwagons without having any clue on what to do. It's not ideal to just grab something in the box because it's meatless and call yourself a vegan. I was a vegan for 3 years, and I didn't do this because I was trying to, be a vegan. And I should say I followed a vegan lifestyle because I don't really like labels. But one of the things I followed a vegan lifestyle is because I'm a health coach, and people always ask me about eating. And I wanted to make sure that I gave people honest advice, and not just advice based on what I heard or what I read, but advice from actually living it and feeling it. And in addition to following the vegan lifestyle, I've done the strictest form of Atkins. I've done ketogenic diets. I fasted for 21 days. I can tell you just about everything there is to know about these different eating styles. And I will tell you, one of the things that saved me as in following a vegan lifestyle is the fact that I ate a lot of different foods. I probably ate like 20 different types of beans in any given month, different grains, different combinations. And this is the stuff you have to think of. What I love about Tabitha Brown, and I know you all know who she is, you see how she's always playing around in her kitchen? She's always playing around in her kitchen. That's how you have to be when you eat plant-based. You can't just get fixated on one food and say, this is all I'm going to eat, because you want to make sure you're getting those complete proteins that your body needs. Now, I'm not here to preach to you, but I had to get that out the way. You see what I'm saying? Give me a fist bump if you understand what I'm saying, if you're ready to make sure you're doing these complete proteins, because it's not hard. It's not hard. Now, you're probably wondering in your head right now, your head is spinning and you're saying, well, how much? How much? It's a common question. How much? The key takeaway of what I want to tell you is that consuming an average, listen to this very carefully, write it down, make note of it. Consuming an average of 0.4 to 5.0, or excuse me, 0.5 to 0.5 grams of protein per pound of your body weight is a great target for staying in good health and great shape. 0.4 to 0.5. So basically, if you weigh 200 pounds, that's pretty much 100 grams of protein, tops, max, that you would be having for overall good health. Now, again, we're talking about those different types. This doesn't mean look at some beans on a box and say, okay, that's my protein. You have to eat variety. And I can be honest with you. I just gave you a number, but if you eat variety, you don't have to worry about these numbers. Just make sure you're eating variety. And we're going to talk about that towards the end of the show, how to incorporate variety. And you'll get a lot of this as I go through different shows. I'm always talking about different ways to eat foods. If you choose to consume animal-based foods, again, there is really no worries about about consuming adequate amounts. Because I'll just give you an example. A serving of chicken breast is on an average about 25 grams. So if you need 100 grams of protein, 25 grams of serving of chicken breast, get a serving of Greek yogurt, that's 25. So, it's really not that hard when you're eating animal-based foods. But I do want you to focus on how much of them you eat. Notice what I just said. A chicken, I'll use a piece of red meat. Red meat, serving of red meat, of a lean red meat, may have 25 grams of protein, right? That doesn't mean going to eat 4 servings of red meat to get to 100. You got to switch things up because you don't want to overconsume red meat. I generally recommend no more than 2 servings of red meat, well, 2 to 3 servings of red meat in a week. And again, you notice, so I'm telling you something else, full disclosure. I praise all diets. You know what my favorite eating style is? My favorite eating style is the eating style that works for you, your body, and your health. So if you say, Dr. Nina, what's the best diet? Should I stop eating beef? Do you like beef? No. Well, stop eating it, because honestly, this is about what you like to do. Food is meant to be enjoyed. We always focus on the negative around food, but food is meant to be enjoyed. Just don't enjoy it too much. Don't enjoy one of anything too much. Embrace the different types of foods. And that brings me to my next one. As you're looking at how much you eat, also focus on how you prepare these foods. Because frying a piece of chicken is going to change the nutritional value of it. You're talking about frying a piece of chicken, breading it up, versus eating it skinless, possibly skinless, and eating it baked. That's going to change the nutrition composition. And again, I say this a lot. How you pair those foods. Know that foods like red meat, those go well when they're paired with leafy green vegetables versus eating them with potatoes and starches. Think about how you pair these foods. We'll talk about, I talk about food pairings in almost every show. So you'll get plenty of what you need from there. So I'm hoping that I'm helping you there, as we talk about these different food pairings. And again, if you're talking about the plant-based foods approach, you got your complete plant-based proteins, your quinoa, your amaranth. You have your whole another set of complete proteins, your tofu, your tempeh, your edamame, and you have things like rice and beans and your nut butters and your bread, your hummus, your pita bread. These are the things that'll get you to those complete proteins, but you have to eat, folks. So I'm going to put another figure up for a key takeaway because please listen, come in with me. I had a nutrition label over there. We're gonna skip that one today because I talked about the nutrition label. It's 4 grams of fat, but I want to reiterate this figure a little bit more. I always change my plan. Look at all these foods, right? Look at all these varieties. Of these foods, you have complete proteins housed in your dairy foods and your dairy substitutes, right? Those are complete proteins. You have your seafood, poultry, your whole soy foods, is your chicken, your turkey, your tempeh, all that stuff. You have lean meat. And again, you notice this is a very like snapshot recommendation because people are always asking me, how many calories should I eat? And when I want to tell someone to get off the grams and stuff, the stuff that can sound confusing, air frying is wonderful, Wanda. It's all about how that absence of bread. I just answered a question real quick because that's a common question. Air frying is actually a very nice method of getting that frying experience without having to, go with tons of oil and that sort of thing. So yes, variety. You have all these different sources of protein. If you look at some of the serving sizes that I had, or the servings that I had there, instead of thinking about grams of protein and grams of fat and grams of carbs, blah, 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 think about these foods holistically. What can you combine? Are you eating enough servings of each? Think about, you see that vegetables at the bottom? Are you eating 6 to 8 plus servings a day? That's the stuff I'm talking about. And so when we think like this in a more holistic way versus trying to make one food the bad guy, this is just a better approach. Veggies first, fruits in line, and then you move up the pyramid. By the way, this pyramid isn't published. This is my pyramid. This is a pyramid based on years and years of trial and error and experience of dealing with different people. This is something that I give as a visual, and the serving sizes may be different, but this is something that I just give for you to understand that you have to eat, folks. You've got to eat, and everything varies. You understand? So that's the takeaway. And I also want to have another note because I promised that I'll do it in the promo video. I want to talk about high protein diets because high protein diets do work. High protein diets do lead to rapid weight loss. But I want to emphasize again with those high protein diets, you got to eat. And variety is important. You will hear me say that so much. Now, a high protein diet, just in case you don't, if you're not aware of where you go with it, I talk about that 0.4 to 0.6, what was it, 0.4 to 0.5 grams of per pound of your body weight. A high protein diet would look more like 0.6 grams to 0.75 grams per pound of your body weight. So as you can see, that's a significant jump. But in that jump, you're also eating plenty of good fats and plenty of quality carbs. So veggies galore. But to be honest with you, with such a high protein content in your diet, you really should focus on those quality carbs like your vegetables and your fruits and certain fruits. And really, that'll be a situation where you have to kind of push back on those beans and that rice and those sorts of things. So needless to say that following a fully plant-based diet while trying to follow a high protein diet can be difficult because so many plant-based proteins come with carbs. It's not impossible. I've trained many bodybuilders using plant-based diets. I have an extensive training background as well as being a health coach, and I've worked with a lot of bodybuilders in an effort to eat plant-based foods and still get that size and that girth. So you have options, but again, it's all about variety, whether you follow a high protein diet or if you're just trying to have overall good health. Following a diet that's full of variety, even if it's plant-based, is your best bet. So I hope I answered some questions. Put those questions in the queue if I did answer them. And before I move into successful aging segment, I also want to tell you next week is a Q&A. There's just your little sneak peek. So if I didn't give you what you wanted in this these very winded conversations about fat, carbohydrates, and proteins, you got me for 30 minutes answering questions next week. I mean, please get excited. I'm excited. I love answering questions and I love giving good feedback that helps people live better. So, with that being said, thank you for being here. And let's move into the Aging Successfully segment. Now, as I said before, protein is critical for aging successfully. And when I say aging, again, I say it all the time. Let's not just think about, this is something that applies when I'm a senior or something that applies when I'm over 50. Aging starts from the time we're born, but the aging process specifically starts somewhere between 29 and 34, depending on who you are. But if you are one of those people that notice that, when you were younger back in the day, you were slim and really didn't have to worry about all this protein, carb, fat stuff, you were lucky, but somewhere around 30, that belly started getting bigger and you started getting some girth here and there. Well, that happens because aging is associated with a natural decline in muscle. And with that natural decline in muscle comes a natural reduction in metabolism. And metabolism, just in case you didn't know, is the rate at which our bodies naturally burn calories. So if you're in that situation where you haven't exercised, you haven't eaten, you haven't done anything, you haven't focused on anything, you just had this sexy body all while you were young and it just went away or started to drift a little bit, yeah, that's that decline in muscle that naturally happens. And with that decline comes that reduction in metabolism. But the good news is that adequate protein helps preserve the muscle. It doesn't build it up, but it preserves it. Now, I'm always talking about weight training. That with protein, as you age, honey, you are aging as successfully and gracefully as ever. That combination is killer. And if you are not eating enough protein as you age, and I say this specifically if I have some of the seniors, some people over 60 or even some people over 55, as we get older, our taste buds tend to change. So a lot of times, I know my mother-in-law talks about this a lot. You just don't want to eat. Like some foods just don't taste the same, so they're not as fun to eat. So a lot of people, they just don't eat, not because they don't want to, but because the food experience starts to change when you get older. So protein is increasingly important as we age. I'm going to tell you how important it is. You want to focus on quality protein, but you want to get anywhere between 25 and 30 grams of protein in every meal. Now, so that's on top of the fact that let's say that you have a small frame, right? Because I told you that at a minimum, you want to have that 0.4 or to 0.5 grams of protein. Let's say that you're 120 pounds. That's only 60 grams. You're going to have to up that a little bit outside of that equation if you're a smaller frame person, because you're going to need that protein to keep that muscle functioning and keep that muscle preserved. So it equates to about 75 to 90 grams of protein per day, depending on how many meals you eat. So if you want to look at it in volume, look at it at somewhere between 75 and 90 grams of proteins per day. But you have to eat that stuff, people. You have to eat that protein to age successfully. We're taking a lot of these collagen fillers and, protein powders and, all this extra stuff to look beautiful. Know that protein itself is, again, I said it earlier, those amino acids they're important for every single cell function in the body. You need those amino acids, which means you need to eat that protein. So I think I drove home the point a whole lot. We need protein and we need variety. And that's really about all I have today. If you have any other questions, definitely keep asking those questions. I see a lot of great questions in the queue. Let me know, give me a wave, a clap or something, and let me know if this show was helpful for you. Please, I want to know, because honestly, I drive this content based on what's good for you, your body, and your health, not just because I feel like talking about one thing or other next week. So as always, you can find me on that at that salad lady with every single social media channel except Instagram, which wants to be different. It's that dot salad dot lady as shown on the screen. That salad lady is committed to boosting your eating confidence with approachable salad creations, culinary content, but I do a whole lot of healthy living content on there as well. So just different tips, tricks, and things to just help you live a healthier lifestyle. So definitely follow that salad lady and check out that saladlady.com for plenty of ideas on really, building your bowl full of wellness. That's both through food and through behaviors. And if you want ideas on how to pair foods, they're all on there. That's about it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate every eye, every ear that listens. It drives me, it keeps me strong. And be sure to ask questions, plenty of questions, and get your questions ready for next week because, again, it's Q&A. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful weekend and take care.